Hi, friends. It's Cheryl from Tutoring with Cheryl, and I'm here with my good friend Tina McMillan from Atypical Tutors. And believe it or not, we are on episode 10 of the Student Success Squad podcast. And our topic today is connecting the dots, social skills for students. And Tina, we were just talking before we hit the record button that this would have never happened if we would not have connected on a lineable. Can you believe it?
I know. I'm just yeah, I'm overwhelmed. I can't believe it. I'm so glad that we did, because it led to this. Who would have guessed it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I've learned so much from you about dealing with kids that have really special needs. I work with special needs kids too, but just the techniques that you talk about and the strategies that you use have been really impactful in my own private tutoring business. And so I just want to just extend a big thank you to you for bringing your expertise and your patience.
Well, thank you. I've learned so much from you, just from like the tech side of it as well, and how to do things, and not to be afraid, or if you're being afraid, just carry on anyway. That's the hard thing. Just do it. And that's so scary, learning all this new stuff. So we're continuing to be students as well. It's
Oh,
crazy.
absolutely. Absolutely. And here's the deal. I always go, well, I'll try it. And if it doesn't work, we'll go to plan B.
Yeah, what's the worst that could happen, right?
Exactly, exactly. But this topic of social skills is good for not just children in elementary school, it's high school, college, adults. This is really something that we all need to work on. And I find myself sometimes stopping and going, ooh, read the room. Read the room. Are people with me? Are they not with me? And just being aware of kind of what's going on, around myself and what's happening, like are my behaviors impacting somebody else and so forth. So I'm going to kind of let you take the lead on this. Again, Tina has put in a ton of work on this. And so I want to have her take the reins and lead us through the discussion about social skills for students.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much, Cheryl. And I just wanted to say too, just a little addendum, that social skills, I think, is even more so important now, even with all of our technology and how it creates distance between us, and we don't get a chance to kind of read the room because we're not in the room. Do you know what I mean? All we see is a certain percentage of it, and we see what people want us to see, which isn't always the truth. Unfortunately, we don't always tell the truth. You know what I mean? That's because that's the way we are. So I think that's another reason it's so important to have these skills, like, just in your back pocket, and you know where to pull from it and get through,
Yeah, and I love your little GIF or GIF or however people say it. I don't really have a filter. I don't pick up on social cues.
And I think we all know somebody who's like that.
Exactly. Sometimes I think I am sometimes. I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
totally. Me
yeah,
too. Oh my gosh. We all need practice, because we're so
yeah.
used to being on our own, right? So
Right, right. And so we've got the question of social skills. What are they? And so we're going to go ahead and dive in. There's a
yeah,
lot here to unravel.
it's a little wordy. I'll try to break it down, make it a bit more interesting. So just how we can interact and communicate with others. That's the crux of it. So building relationships, having like maintaining a positive relationship in all aspects of our life. So going to school, then eventually going to work, and your family, your friends, anytime you have an interaction with another person. Basically, it could be anybody. It could be an absolute stranger waiting in line and having a conversation. Do you know what I mean? Kind of thing, because everyone's waiting, everyone's in the same boat. Let's talk about something, make it go by a little faster. And it's also a set of tools that we use to navigate everything. People's interactions are very complex. Our facial expressions are very subtle. Sometimes it's hard to pick up on that, and some people just aren't born with that, so they have to be taught it. So that's up to us to help them learn what those subtleties are, and learning those behaviors and adapting them, making them stronger, developing them over time, and so that they could just become, just force of habit. They just become habit.
Right, right. And I think, what I'm kind of thinking of as you're going through that is that word learned. And so if it's learned, then it has to be taught. And the other thing I really want to emphasize, because I was a classroom teacher for so many years, parents, it starts at home. Don't send your child to their pre-K. I'm not sure what you call it in Canada, but you know, that early learning
Yep.
situation, even
Preschool.
daycare.
Yep.
Even daycare, like
Yeah.
you have to do something before they hit the door. Clearly, if you've got a newborn, you can't do that. But what I'm saying is, you know, we can't throw our kids into situations without setting them up for success. If we're not taking the time to teach the behaviors that we want our child to demonstrate, we're setting them up for failure, because then we're going to be angry at them because they weren't successful.
Yeah, and it's really not their fault because they were never told. And maybe that the parents never kind of took a step back and going, well, how did I learn how to do that? You know, sometimes people figure things out, and sometimes it takes time, and or maybe they end up making this huge blunder, and then that sticks in their head, and they, oh, I'm never going to do that again. I remember when that happened. I don't want that to happen to you as well. So looking at it from that perspective is quite helpful too.
Right. And you know, I know you're going to dive into this slide, but I see nonverbal up here and verbal. And when we say read the room, it's not just what's going on around you, it's those facial expressions that, like, there's some kids that just they can't get it. And so I'm sure that you're going to go through all of this, but really, parents, if you're picking up that your children don't understand that you're angry with them based on your expression, you have to teach that to them.
Absolutely. And we'll get more into it farther along as well as to how parents can do that. It's just really, it's actually quite simple. Once you get into the habit of it, it just becomes second nature. So nonverbal, so children that maybe don't speak, or maybe they're late speaking, you know what I mean? 2, 3 years and they haven't said a word yet. So, but they still have a mind, they still need to communicate, they still have questions, they still, you know, just like any other child, but they just may not be able to verbally say that, but with their body, they're still going to give you those same signs. So working on understanding, you know, facial expressions, posture, gestures, how you talk with your hands, tone of voice is a huge one. Making eye contact is a huge one, because that way it's kind of more for the other person. So that way the other person knows that you're actually paying attention to them by looking them in the eye and seeing them. I had a student, I'd worked with him like 2 or 3 times already, and I go one-on-one, and we were sitting on the couch reading a book, and he looked at me, because the first time he was really close to me, and he looked at me, he's like, are you old? And I said, well, I'm older than you. But he finally looked me in the eye, and he could see all my little wrinkles and stuff, and he realized that I was older. But it took him like 3 sessions to figure that out. You know what I mean? But at least he got there. You know what I mean? It wasn't, you know, some people might have thought that was rude, but you know, he's just being honest. He's a kid. You know, they point out stuff, but they have to be taught. Maybe sometimes that could be an inside voice, you know, rather than an outside voice. So that just, it was a teaching moment, and it was kind of funny. You know, I've got a crazy sense of humor, so I just laughed.
Yeah, that would be, you'd be like, yes, I am. And if you have any cures for that, let me know.
I've earned every one of these wrinkles and all these gray hairs. I've earned every single one of them. They are bought and paid for. So, okay, so what are some of the tools we can use to work with nonverbal students? So emotion cards, cards that actually show people's real faces, or it could be even family and friends pictures, and showing expressions, and then labeling them, saying, oh, this person feels this person feels that. Oh, look at that person feels that, kind of a thing. Photographs of places, of objects, of people, of schedules, making charts. So it's kind of preparing them to go somewhere, what to expect in terms of schedules and charts. And a lot of that expectation, I think, if they know what to expect, in another way of saying that, they're less anxious, I find. And anybody's like that. You know, if you're thrown into something, you have no idea what's going to happen, it could be terrifying. And I could bring a bunch of other behaviors that maybe could have been avoided had they known what to expect to some degree. You can't, you know, you always have to have a plan B. You know, sometimes you go this, and this should have happened, and it didn't, but we made it. We figured it out. And then you can build on that success. Like, well, do you remember that time this happened and we thought it was going to be that thing, and you did great. So that means you can do it. You have the ability. You can do that. You can make changes. You know, you can pivot, as they say, and you can get through it. So
That's great.
Yeah. And then the opposite was verbal cues. So if they are able to speak without any, you know, difficulty. So then teaching the nuances and the subtleties of conversation, which is, You know, when you're getting a text message or an email, there's a lot that's lost. You know, somebody could be feeling something and emphasizing something. You know, if something in caps, well, you know they're screaming at you, so you know that. But it took a while for us to figure that out. But there's still a lot lost, and it's all context and how the person says something that makes a huge difference, which is lost when you're texting. You just don't get that. So how to start and end a conversation. You know, you don't just stop and then walk away, which kids will do if you don't tell them, okay, thanks for letting me know that. Okay, bye, or whatever. Just even saying goodbye or saying hello. I've got students that are working on that, how to say hello when you meet somebody and how to say goodbye and how it's expected. And
that was something that I saw with a lot of kids. Like when I was in the classroom and I'd just be walking down the hallway, I would say, "Good morning, how are you? Hello, it's good to see you." And they would just keep their head down and keep walking. And I'm like, I was expecting that exchange. And so parents, if you're listening, pay attention to that. I mean, I would think that if your kids are in a school system, you're thinking, oh, those people are safe people. But if we're saying don't talk to anybody because it's stranger danger, think about, the different places that you're at. Maybe if you're in Walmart, you don't want to do that because you don't know who you're talking to. But if you're at a school, the expectation is just a little hi or yeah, thanks, or something like that. Some sort of a conversation. Just it's rude if you don't. That's
exactly. And you could even extrapolate that to if you're going to some sort of a family outing and you maybe don't see this family members for like maybe once a year. Maybe the kid doesn't even remember them. They're still in the expectation. You will say hi and how are you? And you will answer questions that because they haven't seen you in a while. So they're going to ask you, they're going to say, well, hey, how's this going? Or what have you been doing for the last year? And kids are like, whoa, too much. A lot's happened. I'm not going to give you the run by.
I can't even remember what I had for lunch. What are you talking about?
Exactly. I don't even know what underwear I put on yesterday, or whatever. So yeah, so some of it can be overwhelming, but giving them maybe some standard replies that are expected will help them get through that. And they'd be like, oh, I just said this, they said that, and then I was done. It worked. It's like, yes, I didn't have to stand there for half an hour talking about everything. Like, there's ways to get out of things too that aren't going to be perceived as rude. So that's just part of the conversation.
I love that. Now, I don't want to go too quickly past this slide. Was there I like your hidden rules. I think you kind of hit on that.
And understanding sarcasm is a big thing. A lot of my kiddos I work with are very literal, and kids are literal anyway. It doesn't matter if they have a diagnosis or not. They tend to believe things like, raining cats and dogs. It's like, really? That'd be cool. Well, it's not really going to happen, but that's just what we say. So understanding that, idioms, that's kind of an idiom, but understanding sarcasm, because people will say things and they don't really mean it the way that they're saying it. Again, lost in translation. And figures of speech, like I just said, like idioms and things like that, they just don't get it. So you need to explain it to them when they're away from the situation so that when it happens, they can kind of hopefully pull that from their memory and say, oh yeah, that's right. It doesn't really mean that dogs and cats are falling from the sky. It's going to be okay. So
yeah, I love that. And now, like when you're working with students, you said at some point, either before the recording or during the recording, you said, oh yeah, I've got this on the wall or whatever. You've got these pictures, you've got these things that you take. If you're a parent of a younger child, that might be a great place to start. You can buy them. I think you can even get them like at just your regular store in the teaching section. Sometimes they'll have those big posters and they'll say, here's my emotions. And so you can look at the facial, expressions and kind of figure out, that's what that expression means. But if they don't know, like the word depressed, then you might have to talk about what is the meaning of the word depressed or whatever. Or, well, at the very end, and I will save this till the end, but we've got some resources that Tina uses. And so that might be a better place to put that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. We'll go ahead and talk about the teaching. And before you start this, I am going to mention that, when I first started teaching, teachers were in charge of teaching all of this. And then over time, over that 32 years in the classroom, it became the guidance counselor's job to come in and teach these skills. And so they would be like, okay, this year in 5th grade, we're going to talk about this because last year we talked about this in 4th grade and 3rd grade, 2nd grade, so forth. So they would come in with these role-playing things. And I always found it really helpful because it took one thing off my plate as the teacher. But parents, you can do this at your house. These are things that you can literally do. And so as Tina was saying, you know, you want to teach them, here you go. So parents, get out your notebook or take a screenshot of this part of the discussion. And Tina, whenever you're ready, you can go and talk about breaking down the skill and all of those awesome things.
Okay, thanks. So now we have a better idea what social skills are, which is great. So now we're gonna figure out how to teach it to any age, really. So the first part of teaching any skill, honestly, it could be figure skating, it could be playing a sport of anything, is breaking it down into smaller parts to make it understandable, and then you build on that. Teachers also call that scaffolding. So you start and you build, and you increase the level of difficulty as you go. So one example could be maybe just focusing on making eye contact with somebody for 5 seconds or 2 seconds. You know what I mean? Just focusing on looking at their eyes, because a lot of our expression happens in this part of our face. All right. So if we didn't remember when we wore masks, it was difficult sometimes, but we figured out even when we were wearing masks, what the rest part of our face was actually saying. We could understand the meaning and the emotions behind the words that we were saying, even though we couldn't totally understand what we were saying, but we got through it. And then having real life scenarios. So talking about maybe something that happened early in the day. An example there is kind of going back over a scenario. Oh, do you remember when this happened? What do you think he was feeling when that was happening? Or even like a movie or a TV show or whatever, which everything is exaggerated. So it's actually easier to draw attention to those emotions in movies and televisions and video game because they are so exaggerated. It's so much easier to pick it out. In real life, it's not quite as easy. But if you start off with the big over exaggerated ones and then you narrow it down, eventually they will catch on. And then using social stories, you may not be familiar with that. It's kind of basically what it sounds like is you're writing a story that's can be personalized to your child. There's actually apps and websites that have that ability. You can type in whatever situation. I did one for a student. He was terrified of going to the dentist, and who isn't? Like nobody, I haven't met anybody that likes doing it. So we did a dentist story, put his name in there, what to expect for the most part. Not 100% of the time, but 90% of it, he knew what was coming and what that weird sound was, what the drill sound was. Like, no one's building a house. They're actually taking someone's tooth out. You know what I mean? They're not destroying anything. He's going to be okay. He's not in pain. Hopefully there's no screaming, but yeah, there could be. You got to prepare them for that too.
That's right.
So it's just making a short story, very simple pictures, maybe could be like 6 pages long, and then it's just like a box with an image and then one sentence. It's very, very simple. You can get through it in like less than a minute to go through it, just to reinforce, what's coming up. And so they're prepared for it and they feel more confident that they can handle that uncomfortable situation.
I love that. And, where you were talking about the social stories, I do that a lot, like in the stories that we read, because one of the things that the kids have to be able to do when I'm teaching reading, they have to be able to talk about character traits. And so then we get into the emotions and we talk about, well, do you think that child reacted the way that they should, maybe that expected reaction, or maybe should they have done something differently? So you can do that even just when you're teaching your child, you're reading a book so it doesn't have to be something that you're specifically looking for. It could be an actual book that you're currently reading. And you can do that with even nonfiction. So if reading about a world leader and the world leader reacted some way, you say, well, was that a good outcome or a bad outcome? Or what do you think? What would have been different had they approached it differently? So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities for that.
Yeah.
So,
and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, kind of a thing, and explain what appropriate means, because they might hear that, but they have no idea what it actually means.
Right. And so now you've taught it, and we're going to go into the modeling of the social skills. And when we say modeling, it's not like, you're building something with clay necessarily, but you're going through that practice where you give them a scenario and they have to practice the skill. So you show them how to do it, and then they might practice it. So I'd love to hear your take or your spin on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just like when you're writing, I'm sure you've heard the phrase like, show, don't tell. So that comes up quite often. So show me with your words or your actions rather than just telling me what you're doing. So it's much more interesting. And then it kind of creates a memory that uses more than one sense when you're actually showing, because you're hearing, you're seeing, maybe you're smelling, maybe you're touching, you're using more senses to reinforce that thought. So role playing is the first thing definitely comes to mind for kids to act out a scenario in like a safe environment. So it doesn't matter if they make a mistake, or if they did something that maybe they, was unexpected or whatever, you can turn it into a fun thing, and it still gets the message across, but in a much more like safe and relaxed way. And then there's video modeling. So watching others, like we were talking about, just watching, videos or movies or television shows, whatever, and talking about it, and maybe pausing, because now we have the ability to pause anything now. Pause it, ask a question. Oh, did you see that? I saw that, but what do you think about when that happened? Was that, should they have reacted that way? Or was that a little over the top? You know what I mean? And you can pause it and then talk about it and then go back to it. And then it kind of gives that, instead of just blankly watching something and not being involved in it, it kind of just gives it more meaning. And it also builds that connection with the adult, the parent, maybe it's a guardian, who knows, whatever the relationship is, builds that relationship and builds their conversation level and their understanding and their comprehension level. Well, everything will increase. There's so many things involved in it. Oh,
Right.
it's crazy.
There are, what stood out to me when you said you can watch the video and pause it. Okay, like literally back in the day, I was trying to pause something on a VHS. But I think it's pretty critical. Like if you can capture the facial expression, or they're turning around quickly, or their head is down, like whatever that thing is that you want to find. And then the other thing that you said on here is, watching others through modeling. There's so much out on YouTube put out by other experts who also, try to share their knowledge. You could probably say, type in how to greet somebody, and you could watch somebody do like a 30-second little training on how to greet somebody. And so like, if you're the parent, you're like, well, I don't really want to do that, but there's got to be something out there. Remember that YouTube is the second largest search engine that's out there. So, there's a lot of good stuff that's out there. But I know you were getting down to peer mediated buddies. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, practicing the social skills with other kids, peers that they're in their same age group. So there's lots of organizations that put on different workshops. You bring your kid to them as well, and there's other kids that have similar concerns, and they get to practice in a safe setting as well. They're sharing, they're talking about turn taking and sharing. Again, sharing is a big thing. Kids and sharing, not always a good thing. It doesn't always work. Giving them like natural opportunities. So they might set up a scenario without saying anything, and just see how it plays out. And then that's even more impactful, because it draws on the kids' innate ability already and what they've learned, and they'll probably do exactly what's expected of them, given that the scenario that's been set up by a trained adult in most cases. And then you can draw from that, like look how you did that, you figured that out, like I can't believe you figured that out, that's amazing.
When you were saying go someplace where you can practice that, a couple things popped into my mind. Here in the States, we've got Boy Scouts of America and Girl Scouts of America. And I don't know if you've got something similar to that in Canada, but when the kids go to their summer camps, a lot of this is already built in for them. So even if they would go to like a basketball camp or a softball, something like that, you kind of mentioned that, but like the coaches might say, all right, we're going to practice what it's like to go and greet the other team. Say good game, good game, good game, good game. Even if it was a terrible game, you're not going to go and say, they're going to teach you how to do that. And I remember my own experience just being in Girl Scouts, the different things that you had to earn the badges for, and a lot of those were social skills things. And then for those families that send their children to some sort of a religious faith, and they're going through whatever training that faith has for them, a lot of times, a lot of those social skills are built into those weekly meetings whatever day of the week your group meets, they're going to be there. So take advantage of the things that are already available in your community, and that will give you a shortcut, but it will also allow the kids to practice their social skills because they're with their peers. So yeah. As to keeping our kids at home all the time feels safe to us. We're like, oh, my kids are here. I know what they're doing, but they're not always going to be there with you. I mean, at some point, well, I hope you want at some point, I hope you want your kids to move out, as an adult. It's great when they come to visit, but it's also nice that they're out. Right, Tina?
Absolutely. Yeah. Both of my kids are out, and I was sad at first. I have the whole empty nest thing, but they're successful. That's what we want. That means we've done our job, correctly. We've done what we needed to do. We taught them how to survive in the world and succeed. And that's, what else can you ask for? That's a great thing. And just to touch on what you were just talking about in terms of groups and that, I think the important thing is also routine. So they get to know what to expect. So if we do this every single time, it's gonna catch, and they're gonna figure out, okay, we do this every single time. They may not ask why, they may not delve that deeply into it, but at least they know what to expect. So they might just do it at first just because it's rote, just because, okay, well, they said I need to do this and I'm going to do this. But if they start realizing that same action or whatever they're saying, those words or the phrase that they use works in so many different scenarios, because we are people and we're pretty consistent that way. You see someone, you say hi, that in any language, doesn't matter what language you speak, that's expected. Then that will help their future, in my opinion, make their life easier. Like they'll have maybe not necessarily millions of friends, but they'll have a couple of friends that they can really trust. They'll develop some great relationships. They'll be able to get along with coworkers, which is not always an easy thing to do, and maybe get along with family members, which is also not always an easy thing to do. So it helps them be more successful in life.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you looked at it from that point of view as well. It's not just about our kids being youngsters in the classroom or being at home with you. These are skills that everybody needs. And, it's never fun to go into the office or into your job and work with somebody that has terrible social skills. And we don't want our kids to be the one that everybody goes, you don't want to work with so-and-so. We just don't want that. So I think this talk is very timely. So we're going to transition now to creating a supportive environment. And again, I like this idea of it takes a village to raise a child. Okay. Just because we're the parent, the grandparent, the aunt, the uncle, the friend of the kid, whatever it happens to be, if you're taking on that parenting role, it is very important for you to be, really involved, but also releasing some control and allowing other people to help you, and having that idea that it's everybody's job to create these awesome human beings. So I'm going to let you take it from here.
Yeah, and learning doesn't happen in isolation. You can probably read about something and become, more knowledgeable in it, but until you actually do it, it's not going to make a lot of sense. So definitely family, friends, teachers, everyone on the same page, or as well as they can be. You can't expect everyone, like maybe a grandparent, to understand, well, I just figured it out. You know what I mean? Well, some of it, maybe you did, maybe you just don't remember that maybe somebody told you what was expected. Or maybe you had, back in the day, they had manners classes. They taught you etiquette. It was all taught, and it was accepted that had to be taught. Yep. Now it's kind of gone by the wayside. Now it's expected that everybody just knows, and we don't. We have
when you say it's taught, I immediately had this flashback to being in college, and I had joined a sorority, and I went through 4 years of it. But every year we had a lesson on table manners, like sitting down and conversing, and which way do you pass the food and which fork do you use. And I always thought, this is so stupid, but I got to tell you, that came in so handy. So if parents are like looking for a class on manners, look on OutSchool, because I know that on OutSchool there are actually people who have those classes for kids. It's a great way to just learn, like, okay, you pick up your napkin and you put it in your lap. You don't start to eat until the host sits down to eat, or you're supposed to let the older person go ahead of you in the food line or whatever. Those are kind of those, at least in my family, those are kind of the expected social norms. But those things, like you said, they have to be taught. And I don't know that your school is going to teach table manners.
No, I'm pretty sure. I think we can safely say that it's not ever going to come up. Because it's not a thing. When you're eating fast food, you're not using utensils half the time. You're just using your hands, right? And a bunch of napkins.
Yep, yep. And a lot of the kids that you and I work with, is if they're on the spectrum, sometimes they don't like, spaghetti. They just want their chicken nuggets, so they are only eating with their hands. But then when they grow up and they're ready to take that first bite of their steak or whatever, and they need to know how to use those utensils. So yeah, really important.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just an anecdote. I was just out for dinner on the weekend. May is my month. I have Mother's Day, I have a wedding anniversary, and my birthday. So we're out for dinner. We're out for dinner. And we were actually talking, my children are, late 20s, early 30s. And we were actually talking about the utensils and where they go and all that kind of stuff. We were actually having that conversation, and they know how to use them, but we were talking about, well, how come this is here and I've seen that there, and then we kind of talked about it, and we have our phone so we can look everything up as to the reasons why. But it was actually a conversation. It was interesting. I didn't know we would go there, but we did, and everyone was fine.
I think that's great. That's great.
So getting back to modeling, so we talked about, family, friends, the village kind of a thing. Positive reinforcement, that's always a good thing, better than negative reinforcement. So you want something to keep happening, you want to encourage it in a positive way and point it out. So when they're doing something and they've thought of something, they've interpreted it, they've understood, they've comprehended it, then give them positive feedback. If you want them to do it again, then you do that, right? Next one, extending that to the classroom, which we kind of already talked about, the home environment, and creating a safe space for them to fall, to make a mistake. So whatever, you screwed up, I did this and I screwed up that, I'm okay. I moved on. I learned, don't do that anymore.
Exactly. And the thing is, and I know we've said this in other recordings, but if we do not allow our kids a chance to make a mistake and fail before they leave the safe environment of our homes, and then we send them off out the door, whether they're going to go on to a college or just out into the workforce, they're not going to know how to fail. So we have to allow for failure, and then we're there to help them pick up the pieces. So let those little failures happen. Let them see that they maybe made that mistake. Like you said, go through and reteach if you need to. Hey, next time, maybe we could try it this way. I understand that you didn't understand that. It's okay. Next time, now you know. And then you just move on.
Exactly. That's a hard thing for some kids. It's really hard for them to move on. Like I have a lot of kiddos that almost are perfectionistic. So if they don't get it on the first go, they're just frustrated to no end, and they don't ever want to do it again because nope, can't do it. Like, well, you can. It's not impossible. It's challenging. It's going to be difficult. It's going to test your limits. But if you actually achieve it, you're going to feel so good about yourself. And then you'll be able to do something even harder, knowing that you did this thing. Oh, I can do that. No problem. Do you know what I mean? So there's so many opportunities to build them up.
Yeah, and you and I are in really unique situations because we work with these kids so often. And anytime something's hard, so when I first start working with kids, they're just really reluctant to try things. They're just like, I just can't do it because they're so worried that they're going to fail. But just reminding them that you're here, it's okay to make mistakes. And then when you make the mistake too, and you model and you're like, oh, I don't think I responded right. Or, oh, I should have done this differently. And then they can see that you're a real person too. It just provides that safe space for the kids, and they're willing to take the risk. So whether it's you're teaching reading, math, social skills, whatever it happens to be, it's just about learning how to roll with the punches. And so I love the way you word that. Okay, well, you're going to be able to do the hard things next. And I love that.
I love how you put that. Yeah, that's fantastic. Oh, can we just go back and do that?
Yeah. I'm so sorry. I'm on a roll.
Just the last one, just preparing for future social situations. Yeah, which is great. So talking about events coming up, like maybe it's a family reunion. You haven't seen these people in forever. Maybe you have no recollection of them at all. They haven't been in your life. So preparing, remember so-and-so, he tends to always do this, or he's going to do this, or he likes this, or you know what I mean? Or she likes this, and she's going to squeeze your cheeks or whatever. Just let her do it. You know what I mean? It's her thing. She does it once a year. You'll be okay. You know what I mean? So
someday you'll have that family talk. Like, remember when Aunt so-and-so used to? Yeah.
And you'll laugh about it. You'd be like, "Oh, I used to hate when she did that, but I made it through." You know what I mean? Yeah. And you just laugh about it. It's just what it is. People are people. So yeah, just building on that, and for past successes for future successes. So
Yeah. And I think we've actually talked about that. I might have brought this up either in a private conversation with you or a recording. I think it was you. But, where you're going to take the child to, I'm just going to use something like a library, and they've never been to the library before, but they think it's a playground, but there's expectations to be quiet in the library, and this is how we act in the library. So like the first time I was going to take my granddaughter to the library, I'm like, okay, mom and dad might have taken you to the library before. It's a place where there's a lot of books, but when we go into this library, it's really big, and so if we're really noisy, it might echo and other people might hear it. And so we want to use a quiet voice, and setting them up for success before they just walk in and go, wow, this place is huge, because again, it's a social situation, and then kind of that expected norm. But I also like the family reunion one, because like, hey, we're not just going to walk in and start eating, we're going to visit. Like, this is kind of the expected pattern, and everybody's going to bring food, and you don't have to eat from everything, but make sure that you put something on your plate, because when we leave, I'm not cooking,
yeah,
those types of things.
you can even make a family bingo where it's like, oh, did so and so say this? Yes. Did so and so do that? Yes. Did you get one? I won.
I have never thought of that before. I love that. Ooh, you are so good.
I just thought of that now. I just thought of that now.
Are we ready? I didn't want to rush you. Was there anything else that we wanted to talk about here? These are really good. These are really good points. Okay, so we've got social emotional understanding. So we're going to hop into that.
Right. So how do you develop these social skills? You taught them. Now, how do we get them to be like, rote or just automatic? So helping to identify their own, which is a huge thing, identify their own emotions and label them. We talked a little bit about that, but what does a depressed person look like? Well, if a kiddo doesn't understand emotions, they're going to maybe only get happy or sad. Those are the only two they're going to understand. So there's so many other levels to emotions, being frustrated, feeling sick, maybe having anxiety. What the heck does that mean? Maybe being excited, and excited can be a good excited or, a scary excited. You can have this, physically your body reacts the same way, but the event could be totally different. It could be a roller coaster versus a horror movie. Like, you get the same feeling, but it could be, you could be terrified, you know what I mean? But you're excited by it. So that's confusing, right? So another body language through games like charades is a great game. I teach that to so many kids that I work with. And one kid he got so frustrated that we didn't get what he was acting out. But no, he got frustrated when we did get it right away. And I said, well, that's a good thing, because you acted it out so well. We were able to see exactly what you were acting out. You did great. So then that changed his mindset. He's like, oh, I'm going to do this such a great job. They're going to get it so fast. You know what I mean? Now he gets frustrated if we don't get it right away. So it's like, oh,
I love that. I love that. And I mean, some kids, like you said, they have to be taught this more than once. It's kind of a little bit like reading just reading in general. Like, if they can't pick up a vowel team of some sort, and they just keep saying it incorrectly, and you just go back over and over and over it. The same thing can be said for, emotions or feelings. Yeah. And pointing out when you see it in people. Like, you see somebody at the store, well, how do you think the person's feeling? I kind of feel like they're feeling sad or frustrated, or that person was really not speaking nicely to the cashier. How do you think that cashier felt? And taking those moments to be teachable moments are really good too.
And even looking past that moment and saying, how do they feel? I always came up with scenarios like, well, maybe this and this happened before that person got to the store. Who knows? Maybe someone they know was really sick and they were feeling sad. So that put them in that kind of sad mind frame. So everything was seen through that. Just like, even tell kids, if you're a hammer, everything's a nail.
Oh, that's a good one.
Because that just ends up being your mindset. So, and that's okay. Just like it's okay to be mad, it's okay to have those feelings, because we all have them. It's what you do with them that makes the big difference. Okay. So then developing kind of tails into this, developing and practicing empathy. So having empathy, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And I even do an activity where I literally, since I'm in the kids' home, I grab the parent's shoes, the sister's shoes, whatever shoes are there, and they have to wear them and they have to act out a situation while they're standing in that person's shoes and figure out how would they react. And that kind of gets them out of their head because they're feeling physically the shoes and maybe they're smelling the shoes and that kind of thing. So that's all kind of being part of it, and the role playing, they get to act out, and it's kind of funny most of the time. You know, they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna no, 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 no," you know, being the dad, and their voice changes, and then they sound it, and then when they're their mom, their voice goes really high. You know, it's so funny. So
That's fun.
and the parents are part of it, and they get a kick out of it, and they try to squeeze into their kids' shoes, and and that is it's funny on its own. So there's that. And self-regulation, which is kind of what we've been talking about. We haven't specifically said it, but in learning how to regulate yourself, or to kind of monitor and be in touch with how you're feeling, and noticing those changes. Like, oh, I feel like my heart's beating a little faster. What does that mean? Does that mean maybe I'm scared? Maybe something's happening I'm nervous about, so it makes my heart beat faster because my heart's and my brain is taking over and thinking, oh, maybe be careful of this, getting into warning mode. You know, why is this happening? Well, maybe not getting into the why as much until they're a bit older, but you know what I mean? Noticing changes in their body and knowing, like, you know, maybe they're sweating, maybe their hands are getting sweaty, like things like that. So, and ways that they can work on that, like breathing properly, like kind of taking a deep breath in with your nose, out through your mouth, you know, kind of thing. Learning how to calm your heartbeat, calm that down, calm your body so that you can focus more on what you need to do and less on the response, or I can't think of the word, the automatic response or the reflex, maybe not
Okay.
focusing necessarily on that, and labeling it. Oh, I feel this. And then so at least other people know what you're feeling. Then they can help you. If they don't know what you're feeling, because I can't see inside your head. I don't know how many times I say that in a day. I can't see inside your head. Can you see inside mine? I hope not, because I can't see inside yours. So I have no idea what you're thinking. You need to tell me.
Right. Right. And I think sometimes our kids don't realize that the feeling has to be expressed not necessarily through the way that they're reacting, but by talking about it and giving them permission to talk about it and teaching them how they can talk about it. Well, right now I'm feeling sad because, and like trying to figure out, well, you know, well, what happened? Can you tell me more? All right. So you responded by yelling, which has probably made you feel better, but how did it make the other person feel? And moving forward, what could we do? Could we count to 10 and then raise our hand and say, I have a question. I'm feeling, I'm confused, or you gave me the wrong milk. I really wanted white milk, but you gave me chocolate milk, and I just really can't drink the chocolate milk. Could I have a glass of water instead? You know, something like that.
Yeah.
And then, because some kids just don't know how to self-regulate, they just have no clue. And so then they'll get angry because they're, like you said, we can't see what's going on in your mind. We don't know what the expectation that you showed up at this particular moment with. You were expecting white milk and you got chocolate milk. And so just asking for that replacement, not realizing that they can ask for it. They just like, well, you gave me the wrong thing. You know, what I'm saying is we teach that. So yeah.
Right. And teaching problem solving also is part of it. Like it's just basically problem solving. This is happening. What are our options? What do we do about it? You know, is screaming going to get what I need to do, get what I want? Not really. Is throwing something across the room going to help what I'm frustrated about? No. What if I just move that over? Maybe that's it, or turn that light off, or maybe that music's too loud. Just being more specific as to what is bothering you, not just going automatically to the reaction. Having them stop and think, which is a strategy as well. Stop, take a breath, maybe count to 10 and think, let's figure this out. There's always a solution, always.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why we're really focusing on encouraging our parents to teach so that the kids show up and they're ready. So that's really important. So we've got social skill therapists is next.
Yeah, so these are our professionals that possibly are in your child's life through the school system or maybe privately, could be either one. And I just wanted to say what they are, what they do. So
Mhm.
speech language therapy is not just how if they're talking or not. They talk about communication, like maybe why they're not talking. It could be an actual disability or physical ailment, but just understanding social cues, which is what we're talking about, and social skills, and it helps them develop strategies for that as well. It kind of all ties in. You wouldn't think with speech language therapy that would cover that, but it actually does. So that's a therapist's role that I find a lot of parents don't quite understand what that
Mhm.
means.
Mhm.
When they get it assigned to their child, they're like, what they've been talking since they were like one, like what,
Right.
but there's a bunch of other things too. And then there's psychological counseling. Everyone knows the psych. The psychologist comes in and does an assessment so that you understand their role. So they help with anxiety if there's anything like that, building confidence, giving them strategies to practice the social skills in a therapeutic and safe setting, which you've kind of talked about as well, which can be also done in the home and in the school. So, and then the last one, occupational therapists and physical therapists, OT, PT. So occupational therapists deal more with fine motor. So, and also through play and helping learning different social skills in a fun setting and working with sensory issues, touch, smell, anything kind of that, fidgets, that kind of thing can fall into that. Memory, cognitive, like memory, movement, balance, and also the physical therapy is kind of the gross motor, so bigger movements and balance and how they feel in the world. Like some kids I find work better if both of their feet can touch the floor when they're writing or doing something. Sometimes like if they stand because they just feel more grounded. And that's totally fine. Or getting like a stool. I've had that kids that are shorter, and if we have to sit down at a table, they have a step stool they put their feet on. That makes them feel more grounded and more secure, and then they can focus less on their feet flying around and moving around.
Right.
They can focus on actually doing the work. It's a huge difference. It's a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. And here in the States, a lot of these are already built into the actual physical building. Maybe not the psychologist isn't always there, but there could be like a school counselor that might be there. Maybe the psychologist comes in from another area, depending on the school and what they have available. And these services are free. Are they free in Canada?
As long as you have a specified diagnosis.
Well, I should have said that. Yeah.
No, that's okay.
Our kids have to have the diagnosis.
Yeah. As long as they have that. The assessment isn't always. Sometimes if the school maybe doesn't see everything that the family does, then it's up to the family to have the child assessed and go forward. So it's not always covered. So it depends on, every situation is different, unfortunately. So yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes
so
it only goes for a certain amount of time. Yeah.
Right. So through our schools, they go through the SAT process, the 504 process, which has a little bit different name in Canada. And then they do their MDT, and then they get their IEP, which is all just teacher talk for your child's identified. They start with strategies, they move a little bit forward where they get intervention, and then boom, they're in a program. And once they're identified with some sort of a special need, then the specialist comes in and they provide the help that the child needs. But those are in extreme cases, but really everything that we've led up to, a lot of this can be taken care of at home. So before your child gets there, it won't be solved by everything, but there are going to be, some differences. I love this picture. Every child is different. No one size fits all. I love that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because every child is different. We have to treat them all differently, and your child best, and you know what's, and has that, not to say it's not respected, but I'm just saying you have to be an advocate for your child because they're not able to do it for themselves.
Right. And you're your child's first teacher.
Exactly.
So yeah. Okay. And so we're almost to the end. So we want to talk about resources. And then of course, we always want to let you know that we're qualified to help your child, but let's go through the resources and I'll let you talk about some of your favorites here.
The one in the top, well, I see the top left corner of my screen, Topic Talk. It's a series of questions and little cards that have a scenario on them. And it's they ask the question in a way that it's not a yes or no question. So you have to talk about the answer, which is great. I use it for a lot of my kiddos that struggle with conversation. And actually most kids do struggle with conversation. They don't know what's expected of them. They don't know how to answer in more than just a one word answer, because you are. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I have students that could probably really use that. I might have to go get that game.
it's very cool. It has a timer in it, which I haven't really used because it ends up being more of a distraction because it's a really loud, old-fashioned timer, like an egg timer. It's what's
Mhm.
inside. So I don't tend to use that because it is a distraction. Especially for some kids, I'll take it out of the box completely. So it's not, okay, can we put the timer away, please? You know what I mean?
I
And then
love that.
and then charades, which I was talking about. There's so many versions of charades for kids. There's card versions if you don't want to have the whole big box. And in this game, they have 3 different options on the card, and there's a dice in there. So you roll the dice if you want to. I just pick them randomly. I don't make them roll the dice unless they want to. And whatever the dice rolls, that's the one that you do. And it has a picture of one of them. So some of the kiddos that have a struggle with maybe reading, they can see the picture of what they need to do, and then they're able to act it out. And then it usually ends up being something really funny. So much fun. Even I worked with older kids, I think a 10-year-old and a 9-year-old, brother and sister, and they're amazing at it. They love playing this game at the end of our session. It's so fun.
That's awesome.
And then the big picture there is zones of regulation. We didn't talk about specifically, but we talked about self-regulation. And this talks about all of our emotions that we have in our body. And they're divided into 4 different color zones to help the kids remember. So green is ideal, kind of when you're feeling happy and calm and you're ready to learn and you're good to go, everything's going great. And then you go in the blue zone, maybe you're feeling a little sick or sad or bored, that be considered the blue zone. And trying to the idea is to figure out how to get from blue zone back to the green zone. What do you need to do? It's a little bit of a jump. In the yellow zone, you're feeling a bit more worried, you may be excited, you're frustrated, you're being silly. So they're not all negative. There are some are positive as well, but they're all states of our minds and our emotional states. So then the idea is to figure out how do you get from being silly back to the green zone, And then the red zone, is where you're angry, maybe when you're panicking, maybe you're terrified, maybe you're so excited, so happy about something, but you need to calm down a little bit, because you're getting a little out of control. And how to get back to the green zone. That's the idea behind that. And there's lots of programs online about that are free. Like there's posters like this. There's a bunch of activities, just tons. And then there's people like us that we deal with it as well, so we can always help with strategies too. And then the last one I kind of alluded to before. It just shows what a social story looks like. It's very, very basic. Says I can join an activity, I can keep my hands and my feet to myself, I can be safe during a fire drill. Those are real things for kids I've dealt with before. So just depending on what you're working on, that can really hone in and isolate that one thing that you want them to work on in a visual way. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And those are all things that teachers also use in their classroom. So the kids might actually be really familiar. But we want to thank everybody for joining us for this conversation. And you can always reach out to either one of us. I'm here in the United States and Tina is in Canada, but we service kids anywhere. We, again, want you to like and share this with anybody who might need the information. And we have 2 more scheduled recordings. We're going to have to decide, do we want to keep going? Because it will be in 2 months, it will be a year since we started this journey together. So it's been a lot of fun taking time to, talk with the parents. And yeah, it's been great. So we want to thank everybody for joining us. And anything else for the cause, Tina, before we sign off?
Thank you for watching our videos. I hope you've learned something, at least one tidbit of information you didn't know before. I'm sure we've shared a lot more than that. I'm sure just within our conversation always comes up other ideas that weren't actually on the slide, which is kind of great. I love that kind of freestyle that we have. And if you have any questions, let us know. Drop us an email, check out our websites. We'd love to help you. Absolutely.
Yeah, we both have a contact page on there, so you can reach out to us at any time. All right, we're going to wrap it up. You guys, thanks for joining us today. Like, share, leave a comment. Let us know if you have any questions, anything that you've tried that's worked. And you guys make it a great day and keep the learning going. We'll see you. Bye.
Bye.